They say love blinds you. I never understood how true that was until now. For 15 years, I believed in us. I believed in the quiet Sunday mornings when Anna would rest her head on my chest, tracing lazy circles on my skin. I believed in the inside jokes, the whispered conversations at dinner parties, the stolen kisses when the kids weren't looking. I believed in the life we built, brick by brick, with laughter, with struggles, with everything that made a marriage real. And then, just like that, it was gone. The first crack was small, almost invisible. Started with her phone. She used to leave it anywhere, on the kitchen counter, on the nightstand, on the couch next to me. But then, one day, it was always with her. Face down. On silent. First, I ignored it. Then I noticed the late-night texts. The way her lips curled into a faint smile when she read them. "Work," she'd say, brushing it off. Then came the absences. She'd always been dedicated to her career, but suddenly, meetings ran late. Business trips appeared out of nowhere. Dinners we had planned for weeks were abruptly canceled because something urgent came up. Just a phase, I told myself. Stress, workload, it'll pass. But something inside me whispered, look closer. Then there were the small, almost imperceptible changes. The perfume, it was different, subtler, more expensive. Her wardrobe, new dresses, silk blouses that hugged her curves in ways I hadn't seen in years. Lingerie that, strangely, never made an appearance at home. And her body language. A wife knows her husband. A husband knows his wife. And I knew something had shifted. When I touched her, she tensed, just for a second, just enough for me to feel it. When I kissed her, it felt rehearsed. Like muscle memory, not passion. And yet, I still refused to believe it. Until the night she lied to my face. It was a Friday. She came home later than usual, the scent of wine clinging to her like an invisible ghost. Her cheeks were flushed, her pupils slightly dilated. I knew the look. I'd seen it before, on our honeymoon, on our anniversaries. But this time it wasn't for me. Work dinner, she said, slipping off her heels. With who? She hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. Just the team. You know how it is. She kissed my cheek and walked past me, heading straight for the shower. That was another thing. The showers. They used to be quick. Now they were long, almost ritualistic, as if she was washing something away. I sat down at the kitchen table, staring at my reflection in the darkened window. And then I made a decision. I had never doubted her before, but now doubt was all I had. So I picked up her phone, and I entered her password. She hadn't changed it. A part of me had hoped she had hoped that I was just being paranoid. But no, the screen unlocked. Messages, emails, nothing suspicious at first glance. Then I checked the hidden folder, and that's when my world cracked open. Inside there were pictures, receipts, screenshots of texts, a reservation for 2 at a hotel I had never been to, and then the messages. I can't wait to see you again. Last night was incredible. You drive me crazy. He suspects nothing. I felt my breath leave me. My hands clenched so tightly around the phone that my knuckles turned white. I clicked on one of the photos. It was her, in a dimly lit hotel room, wearing a black lace slip I had never seen before. She was taking a mirror selfie, lips slightly parted, eyes glowing with something I hadn't seen in years. Desire, but not for me. My vision blurred. My head felt like it was filling with static. The room around me seemed to shrink, the walls pressing in. I scrolled through more messages, piecing together the timeline of her betrayal. It had been going on for months. While I was home, putting the kids to bed, she was with him. While I was planning surprise getaways, she was sneaking out to see him. While I was loving her, she was giving herself to someone else. And the worst part? I recognized the man. My stomach turned to ice. It was someone I knew. Someone close. A name I never expected. His name was Daniel. My best friend. My brother in everything but blood. We met in college, shared our first shitty apartment together, celebrated each other's milestones. He was the best man at my wedding. He was there when my children were born, holding cigars and telling me I'd be the best father in the world. And now he was the man sleeping with my wife. I sat there, staring at the screen, willing the messages to change. Wishing, praying that it was some mistake. That maybe this was just another Daniel. Some stranger with the same name. But no. The texts were too personal, too familiar. I knew his style, his way of speaking. And then I saw it. A photo. Taken just a few days ago. Anna, sitting in the passenger seat of his car. Laughing, her hand on his knee. It was casual, intimate. The kind of photo couples took when they thought no one was watching. Except now I was watching. My hands were shaking. My body felt like it wasn't my own. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone against the wall, to march into the bathroom, rip open the door, and confront her while she washed off the scent of another man. But I didn't. Instead, I sat there. I sat there and let the betrayal sink in. The bathroom door opened. Steam rolled out, and Anna stepped into the hallway wrapped in a towel, her wet hair clinging to her shoulders. She saw me sitting at the table, her expression momentarily shifting. Was that guilt?
Surprise?
Fear? You're still up? She asked. I looked at her, really looked at her. And for the first time in 15 years, I didn't recognize the woman in front of me. She moved toward me, pressing a hand to my shoulder. Mark? You okay? I forced a smile. The kind of smile I had given her 1,000 times before. The kind that said, I trust you.
Yeah, elite.
Because if I confronted her now, I'd lose control.
Ides cream.
I'd demand answers she wasn't ready to give. And I didn't want an argument. I wanted proof. So I played along. I kissed her forehead. I told her I was tired and went to bed. And as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let her know I knew. Not yet. I was going to catch them. The next morning, I woke up before her. My body felt heavy, exhausted, but my mind was sharp, focused. I checked her phone again, nothing new. She was careful, erasing messages, making sure there were no obvious traces. But I had a plan. I called Daniel. Hey man, I said, keeping my voice casual. You free this weekend? We should catch up. There was a pause, a hesitation so brief that most people wouldn't notice it. But I did. Yeah, he said. Let me check with work, but I think I'm good. Liar. I already knew his schedule. We worked in the same industry. He wasn't on shift this weekend. I'll text you later, he added quickly. Sounds good. I hung up, gripping my phone so tightly my fingers ached. Step 1. Set the trap. That night I watched Anna carefully. She was distracted, checking her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. Her fingers tapping quickly, then deleting messages. I leaned against the doorway. Big project at work? She jumped slightly. Huh. I gestured to her phone. You've been glued to that thing all night. She smiled too easily. Yeah, just deadlines, you know? I nodded. Makes sense. And then I did something I never thought I'd do. I walked over, kissed her softly, and whispered, I love you, because I needed her to believe I suspected nothing. And as she kissed me back, I felt her deception in the way her lips hesitated against mine. The next day I followed her. I told her I had a work meeting, kissed her goodbye, and left 10 minutes after she did. She had said she was going out for lunch with a friend. But I already knew she was lying. I stayed 2 cars behind, watching as she drove across town. My pulse was hammering so hard I thought I'd pass out. She pulled into a parking garage. I waited, and then, seconds later, Daniel's car arrived. I watched as she got out, her face lighting up. She climbed into his passenger seat, laughing. He leaned over, kissed her. It wasn't just a peck. It was the kind of kiss that made my stomach turn. They pulled away, disappearing into the city. And I sat there, heartbroken, enraged, but most of all ready, because this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. I should have felt broken. I should have let the weight of her betrayal crush me. But instead, something else took over, something colder. I wasn't going to lose my temper. I wasn't going to confront them in a blind rage. That's what they would expect. That's what cheaters always expect. That their victim will fall apart, Scream, cry, beg for answers. No, I was going to be patient. I was going to watch. And when the time was right, I was going to destroy them. I didn't follow them after they left the parking garage. I already had enough to confirm what I suspected. Instead, I drove home and began my real work. I opened my laptop and started digging. Anna had always been careful about hiding her messages, but she wasn't as cautious with her email. I hacked into her iCloud account, not with any fancy software, just simple password recovery tricks. And what I found, it was worse than I imagined. Hundreds of deleted emails, recovered from the trash. Travel confirmations, dinner reservations, hotel bookings. She hadn't just been sneaking around for a few months. This had been going on for nearly 2 years. I clicked on an email thread labeled Weekend Plans Red Heart and felt my stomach turn. Daniel, can't wait to see you again. I miss you. Anna, me too. Every time I'm with him, I just think about you. Counting the days until Friday. Daniel, I still can't believe he hasn't figured it out. You're an amazing liar, baby. My blood ran cold. Amazing liar. I stared at those words, feeling them burn into my brain. I could almost hear Daniel's smug voice saying them. The man I trusted more than anyone. The man who held my son in his arms the day he was born. The man who stood beside me on my wedding day, calling my wife an amazing liar. This wasn't just an affair. This was mockery. I kept reading. More messages. Plans. Daniel, let's go somewhere special this time. Somewhere he'd never think to look. Anna, I know just the place. I'll book the suite again. Suite. My hands trembled as I scrolled through her booking history. And then I found it, reservations at a luxury hotel just an hour outside the city. One every few months. Always under a different name, always the same room. I pulled out my phone and called the hotel. Hello, this is Mark Davidson, I said, using the fake name from one of the reservations. I think I left something in my usual room. Could you remind me of the last date I stayed there? There was a pause. Then the receptionist answered, Of course, Mr. Davidson. You last stayed with us 2 weeks ago on Friday night. Would you like us to check the lost and found? I swallowed the bile rising in my throat. No need. Thanks. I hung up and took a deep breath. 2 weeks ago, she had come home that Saturday morning, kissed our children, made pancakes, laughed at my jokes. And the whole time she had been with him the night before. I clenched my fists, forcing myself to stay calm. There was no use getting emotional now. I needed more proof. I needed video. That night I barely spoke to Anna. She didn't seem to notice. She was too busy on her phone, smiling at messages she thought I'd never see. I kissed her goodnight, told her I loved her, and the next morning I bought a hidden camera. I installed it in our bedroom, another in the living room, one more in the car. Small, undetectable. The kind used for security, motion activated, easily accessible from my phone. And then I waited. I started tracking her movements, paying attention to her routine. Every Thursday night, she took longer showers. Every Friday, she found a way to leave early, always with some excuse. Her texts were more frequent in the days leading up to her meetings with Daniel. Then finally it happened. That Friday, she left around 6 p.m., claiming she was meeting a friend from work. I watched her go, my heart pounding, my hands shaking with a mixture of rage and anticipation. Then I grabbed my car keys and followed. She drove to the same hotel. And this time, I wasn't just going to sit back and take it. This time, I was going inside. I had never been inside this hotel before. It was the kind of place reserved for business executives, lovers sneaking away, and people who had something to hide. Everything about it was sleek, dark marble floors, gold-trimmed elevators, and a soft jazz melody playing from hidden speakers. I walked in with confidence. If I looked like I belonged, no one would question me. At the front desk, a polished young woman in a navy blue uniform greeted me. "Good evening, sir." Checking in. I forced a smile. "Actually, I'm here to surprise someone. My wife, Anna Davidson. She should have checked in about an hour ago." The receptionist's smile didn't falter. "I'm sorry, sir, but we can't disclose guest information." "Of course," I said, pretending to understand. I leaned in slightly, lowering my voice. Listen, she booked this trip as a surprise for me. Romantic getaway. I forgot the room number, and I don't want to ruin the moment by calling her. Could you help me out? Her professional mask cracked just slightly. She hesitated. Then, she glanced at her computer screen. Mr. Davidson, you're in Suite 214.
Suite 214.
I nodded, thanked her, and walked toward the elevators. My hands were sweating. My heart pounded so hard I thought it might give me away. I was about to walk in on my wife and my best friend. The elevator ride was the longest of my life. I rehearsed scenarios in my head. What if they heard me coming and locked the door? What if I walked in and saw something I couldn't unsee? What if I lost control? I had to stay calm. I had to think. I reached the second floor. The hallway was empty, silent except for the distant hum of the ventilation system. The soft glow of wall lamps made everything feel eerie, surreal. I found the door. I pressed my ear against it. Muffled voices. A man's laugh. Her laugh. The sound of clinking glasses. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. Then, I pulled my phone from my pocket and hit record. I knocked. Silence. Then footsteps. The door cracked open and there she was. Anna, wrapped in a silk robe, her hair damp, her eyes wide with shock. Behind her, Daniel was sitting on the edge of the bed, shirtless, holding a wine glass. The scene was straight out of my worst nightmare. She froze. Mark! Surprise! I said, my voice eerily calm. She stepped forward, blocking the doorway. What are you doing here? Funny, I said, tilting my head. I was about to ask you the same thing. Daniel stood up, setting his glass down. He had the audacity to look nervous. Listen, man, I turned my phone screen toward them, letting them see the red recording icon. I already know, I said, my voice dropping. I've known. Anna's breath hitched. Daniel's face turned pale. Move, I told her. She didn't. Move, I repeated, my voice like ice. She stepped aside, and I walked into the room. It smelled like expensive perfume, wine, and betrayal. You think I wouldn't find out? I turned to Daniel. How long? A year? 2? He swallowed. Mark, listen. Punched him. Hard. His head snapped back, and he crashed against the dresser, knocking over the wine bottle. Anna screamed. Mark, stop. She grabbed my arm, but I shoved her off. Daniel coughed, holding his jaw. You're crazy, man. I took a slow step toward him, my hands shaking. Not with fear, but with barely contained rage. You slept with my wife, my best friend. My voice cracked. You think I won't be crazy? Anna started crying. Please, Mark, we can talk about this. I laughed. It wasn't a sane laugh. Talk? You want to talk? I held up my phone. I have everything. The texts, the emails, the reservations. My gaze burned into hers. You played me for a fool. She sobbed, but I felt nothing. I turned to Daniel. Get out. He hesitated. I grabbed him by the collar and slammed him against the wall. Get out. He scrambled, grabbing his shirt and shoes, and bolted out of the room. I turned back to Anna. She looked smaller now, fragile, like a pathetic version of the woman I once loved. I stared at her for a long moment. Then I left, and I didn't look back. I drove home in silence. No music, no radio. Just the low hum of the tires against the pavement and the relentless thudding of my heartbeat in my ears. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles had turned white. I could still feel the weight of my fist connecting with Daniel's jaw, the satisfying crunch of bone beneath my knuckles. But it wasn't enough. It wasn't even close to enough. I had walked out of that hotel room, but the rage stayed with me, curled in my chest like a living thing, clawing, burning, demanding release. My mind was a war zone of images. Anna in that silk robe, her lips swollen from his kisses, the way her body instinctively moved to shield him. Not me, him. I pulled into the driveway and sat there, gripping the wheel, staring at the darkened windows of our home. My home, the house we had built together, the place where we had raised our children, celebrated anniversaries, whispered promises of forever. All of it was a lie. I needed to clear my head. I needed to think. Instead of going inside, I turned the key in the ignition and backed out again, driving aimlessly through the city. Streetlights flickered past in a golden blur. My mind was spinning, replaying every single moment, every sign I had ignored. The late nights, the laughter behind locked doors, the unexplained absences. Had she ever really loved me? Or had I just been convenient? A paycheck, a security net, a dull but stable fixture in her life while she chased passion elsewhere? I pulled into an empty parking lot and shut off the engine. My fingers itched to check my phone, to see if she had tried to call or text. I resisted. She wasn't sorry. Not really. She was just sorry I found out. I stayed out for hours, sitting in the dark, trying to process everything. But no matter how hard I tried, I kept coming back to the same conclusion. I couldn't just walk away from this. People always say that revenge is pointless, that it doesn't fix anything, that it only drags you down. But those people have never been betrayed like this. I didn't just want to hurt Anna and Daniel, I wanted to ruin them. I opened my phone and scrolled through my recordings. The audio from the hotel room, the text messages, the emails, all of it neatly organized, time-stamped, undeniable. There was no way in hell they were getting away with this. By the time I got home, it was almost dawn. The house was silent, but the second I stepped inside, I knew she was awake. The dim glow of the kitchen light spilled into the hallway. Anna was sitting at the table, still in her robe, her hair pulled into a loose ponytail. Her eyes were swollen and red from crying. In front of her sat a half-empty bottle of wine and an untouched glass. She looked up as I entered. "Mark!" Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. I didn't say anything. I just stood there, staring at her. She swallowed hard. "Please, say something. What do you want me to say, Anna?" My voice was empty, hollow. "That I forgive you?" She flinched. I stepped closer, crossing my arms over my chest. "Why him?" She closed her eyes, exhaling shakily. "I don't know. Not good enough." Her lip trembled. "It wasn't supposed to happen. It just did." I laughed. A cold, bitter sound. "You accidentally tripped and landed in bed with my best friend?" Repeatedly, over the course of 2 years. Tears welled up in her eyes. "I was lonely. Lonely," I repeated, my voice rising. "You had a husband who loved you, family, a home, and you were lonely?" She pressed her hands to her face, shaking. "I didn't mean to hurt you." I felt something inside me snap. "You didn't mean to hurt me?" I took a step forward, forcing her to look at me. "You planned trips together. You lied to my face. You mocked me behind my back. And now you want to sit here and cry because you got caught." She didn't answer. I shook my head, exhaling sharply. "I should hate you." She let out a quiet sob. "Do you?" I hesitated. The truth was, I didn't know. I hated what she did. I hated the betrayal, the lies. But there was a time, before all of this, that I had loved this woman more than anything. And now that love was poisoned, twisted into something unrecognizable. I took a step back. "Pack your things." She blinked, stunned. "What? You're leaving." My voice was ice. "You don't get to stay in my house." Her breath hitched. "Mark, please. Save it." I turned away, heading toward the stairs. "By the time I wake up, I want you gone." She broke then, collapsed into sobs, begging, pleading. But I didn't stop. I went upstairs, shut the bedroom door, and locked it. I stood there for a long moment, my hands trembling, my chest heaving with barely controlled fury. Then I grabbed my laptop, because this wasn't over. Not even close. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the muffled sounds of Anna sobbing downstairs. A part of me, some pathetic, broken part, almost felt sorry for her. But I crushed that thought as soon as it surfaced. She wasn't crying because she regretted what she did. She was crying because she got caught. By the time the first light of dawn seeped through the blinds, My mind was clear, cold, focused. It was time to stop reacting. It was time to plan. I heard the front door close around 6 a.m. I waited a few minutes, then walked downstairs. The house felt different, empty. Her perfume still lingered in the air, but her presence was gone. I checked the closet. Half of her clothes were missing. The drawers, too. She left in a hurry. Good. I poured myself a cup of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, pulling out my phone. My hands were steady as I scrolled through my saved evidence. The recordings, the screenshots, the hotel receipts. Everything I needed to ruin them was already in my possession. But I needed to be smart. I wasn't just going to expose them, I was going to destroy them. I started with Daniel. I knew where he worked, knew that his job required a clean reputation. I also knew something Anna didn't. Daniel had been using company funds for personal expenses. Nothing major, just small transactions here and there. A dinner billed as a client meeting. A hotel stay labeled as travel expenses. He thought no one would notice, but I had noticed. I had access to his work emails. A few years ago, Daniel had asked me to help him set up his new phone, and in doing so, I had saved his login credentials. He never changed them. Idiot. I opened his inbox and scrolled through his financial reports. It didn't take long to find the discrepancies. I forwarded everything to his supervisor, anonymously, of course. Daniel was about to lose his job. Step 1. Complete. Next, I turned to Anna. She worked for a high-end real estate agency. Reputation was everything in her industry. Trust, credibility, without those, she was nothing. I went through her work email, searching for anything that could be used against her. And that's when I found it. An email thread between her and a wealthy client. The client had asked for an off-the-books discount, an illegal one, and Anna had agreed, thinking no one would ever find out. I forwarded the emails to her boss. Step 2. Complete. By noon, the wheels were already in motion. Daniel's supervisor responded first. We appreciate this information. An internal audit will be conducted immediately. Please provide any additional evidence if possible. Then Anna's boss. This is a serious breach of company policy. We will be investigating immediately. Thank you for bringing this to our attention. I smiled. They had no idea what was coming. That evening, I received a text from Anna. Anna, can we please talk? I stared at the screen for a moment before replying. Me, about what? Anna, about us. About everything. Me, there is no us. A few minutes passed. Then another message. Anna, I know you're angry, but please, Mark. I don't want to lose everything. I laughed bitterly. She still thought she had a choice. Me, you should have thought about that before you screwed my best friend. No response. I put my phone down, leaned back in my chair, and exhaled slowly. This was just the beginning. The next morning, everything started falling apart for them. Daniel called me first. I let it go to voicemail. Then, a second call. The third. Finally, I answered. His voice was frantic. Mark, listen to me. I don't know what's going on, but my boss just called me into a meeting. There's a full audit happening. Someone sent them emails. I smiled. Really? That's crazy. Mark. I hung up. Seconds later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was Anna. I let it ring. Then came the text messages. Anna, Mark, please. My boss just called me in. Someone sent emails. Anna. Was it you? Anna, Mark, answer me. I didn't. I had nothing more to say to either of them. The fun was just getting started. I sat in my office, sipping my coffee, watching my phone light up with their desperate messages. It was almost amusing, the way they scrambled, trying to figure out what was happening. Just a few days ago, they were untouchable, laughing behind my back, making plans, thinking they had one. Now they were drowning, grasping at anything that might save them. Anna was calling again. I let it ring. Then came the texts. Anna, Mark, please, I need to talk to you. Anna, I got fired today. They said I violated company policy. I know you did this. Why are you doing this to me? Anna, please answer me. I smirked. She still didn't get it. I wasn't doing anything to her. She did this to herself. A few minutes later, another call. This time from Daniel. I almost didn't answer, but then I thought, why not? I wanted to hear the panic in his voice. I wanted to enjoy this. I picked up, keeping my tone flat. What? Mark, man, listen. I don't know what's going on, but my boss just called me into a meeting. I'm being audited. They said someone sent in reports about financial fraud. His voice was shaking. Dude, you have to help me. This has to be some kind of mistake. I let the silence stretch, savoring the moment. Then I leaned back in my chair and said, I don't see how that's my problem. Come on, man. We've known each other for years. You know I wouldn't do anything serious. A few small expenses here and there, that's nothing. You can talk to them, vouch for me. I nearly laughed. He actually thought I'd help him. I trusted you, I said, my voice low, steady. I let you into my home. I let you into my life. And you slept with my wife. His breath hitched. Mark, it wasn't like that. It was exactly like that. I could hear his panic growing. Listen, I get that you're pissed, all right? I screwed up. I know I did. But I need your help. If I lose this job, I lose everything. Good. I hung up. The moment the call disconnected, a wave of satisfaction washed over me. He was finally feeling it. The fear, the helplessness, the loss. I had felt those things for months, years. Now it was his turn. Later that evening, I heard a knock at the door. I knew who it was before I even looked through the peephole. Anna. I took my time opening the door. She stood there, eyes red and puffy, her hair a mess, wearing the same clothes from yesterday. She looked broken. Mark, she whispered. I crossed my arms. What do you want? She stepped forward, but I didn't move. Can we talk? Please. I exhaled sharply. Talk? About what? How you destroyed our marriage. How you betrayed me. How you and Daniel spent years laughing behind my back. She flinched at his name. I didn't. Don't lie to me. My voice was razor sharp. Not now. She swallowed, looking down at the floor. I lost my job today. I know. Her eyes flicked up to mine. It was you, wasn't it? I didn't answer. She shook her head, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. You're punishing me. Punishing you? I stepped closer, my voice cold. Anna, you threw away 15 years of marriage. 15 years. For him. Tears welled up in her eyes. I never stopped loving you. I clenched my jaw. You sure as hell stopped respecting me. She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I made a mistake, she whispered. I laughed. A mistake? That's what you're calling it. I gestured toward the driveway. A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. A mistake is burning dinner. What you did, that was a choice. She sobbed, pressing her hands against her face. I just wanted something different. My blood turned to ice. Different, I repeated, my voice dangerously low. She nodded, trembling. I don't know when it happened, Mark. I never meant to hurt you, but after a while, everything between us felt predictable. I felt like I was drowning in routine. And then Daniel, he was exciting. He made me feel alive. I stared at her, feeling something inside me shatter. She hadn't just betrayed me. She had chosen to destroy everything because she was bored. I took a deep breath, forcing the rage back down. Go home, Anna. She reached for me again. Please, we can fix this. I want to fix this. I shook my head. No, you want to fix it now because you lost everything. But you weren't thinking about fixing it when you were screwing Daniel in that hotel room. A fresh wave of sobs racked her body. Please. I exhaled slowly, my voice eerily calm. This is your mess. You clean it up. I want a divorce. And I never want to see you again. She collapsed right there on the porch, sobbing into her hands. But I didn't care anymore. I closed the door. And this time I didn't look back. The divorce papers were filed the next morning. I didn't wait. I didn't hesitate. I wanted her out of my life as fast as possible. The lawyer was efficient, understanding. He had seen this before. seen men walk into his office looking like ghosts, hollowed out by betrayal. But he had also seen what came after. He assured me that time would do its work, that the pain would dull, that one day I'd wake up and this wouldn't be the first thing on my mind. I wasn't sure if I believed him, but I nodded anyway. Anna tried to call. I didn't answer. She sent texts. I ignored them. Then, one evening, my phone buzzed with a number I didn't recognize. I picked up, and the moment I heard the voice on the other end, my stomach turned. "Daniel. Mark," he said, his voice hoarse. "Please, man. Just hear me out." I didn't speak. "I lost my job," he continued, desperation creeping into his tone. "The audit, Jesus, Mark, they found everything. They fired me. I can't get another job in the industry now." He exhaled shakily. "I know you did this." I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling. And? What do you mean, and? "You ruined my life." I let out a short, humorless laugh. "You ruined your own life the moment you decided to crawl into bed with my wife." There was silence on the other end. Then, softly, "I didn't think it would go this far." I shook my head. "That's the problem, Daniel. You never thought." "Mark, please." I ended the call. A moment later, a text popped up. "Daniel, I'm sorry." I stared at it for a long time. Then I deleted it. Anna wasn't taking things any better. She was scrambling, trying to figure out how to rebuild her life. The last I heard, she had moved in with a friend. Her family wasn't speaking to her. Her parents were ashamed. Her sister disgusted. She had burned every bridge. And now she was alone. Good. But there was still one last thing I needed to do. I had been waiting for the perfect moment. And now it had arrived. The video. The one I had taken the night I walked into that hotel room. I never planned to leak it publicly. I wasn't that cruel. But there were people who needed to see it. People who thought Anna and Daniel were still the perfect, respectable people they pretended to be. So I sent it. To Daniel's family. To Anna's closest colleagues. To a few mutual friends. No message.
No explanation.
Just the raw, undeniable truth. And then, I sat back and watched the fire spread. The fallout was immediate. Daniel's fiancée, yes, fiancée, left him the same night. She threw him out of their apartment, blocked his number, erased every trace of him from her life. Anna's reputation was in tatters. The real estate world was small and gossip traveled fast. No agency would hire her now. She had gone from a respected professional to a cautionary tale. One by one, the messages started coming in. Mutual friend number 1, Jesus, Mark. I had no idea. Mutual friend number 2. I thought they were just rumors. But damn, Daniel's brother. I always knew he was a piece of shit.
I am sorry, Mom.
I read each message, then set my phone aside. I didn't feel joy. I didn't feel triumph. I just felt free. For the first time in months, the weight on my chest was gone. I had done what I needed to do. Now I could move on. The divorce was finalized a few months later. Anna tried one last time to reach out, standing outside my house, waiting for me to come out. I didn't. I just watched from the window as she sat on the porch, head in her hands, shoulders shaking. Then finally she left. And that was the last time I ever saw her. The morning my divorce was finalized, I woke up before the alarm. For the first time in months, I didn't feel that crushing weight in my chest. There was no dread, no tightness in my throat, no impulse to check my phone for another one of Anna's desperate messages. It was over. Legally, emotionally, permanently. I stepped outside onto the porch, letting the cool morning air fill my lungs. The world hadn't changed, but I had. The man standing here wasn't the same fool who had once trusted blindly, who had dismissed the signs, who had believed in something that was long dead. That version of me was gone. I sipped my coffee, staring at the quiet street. The past few months had been a storm. Pain, anger, betrayal, revenge. And now that it had all settled, I was left in the eerie silence that followed. For a long time, I wondered if I would regret what I had done. If one day I'd wake up feeling guilty, thinking I had gone too far. But I didn't. Not one bit. Anna had made her choices. Daniel had made his. I had simply made them pay for it. I had no sympathy left for them. They had torn my life apart. I had simply returned the favor. Over the next few weeks, I started rebuilding. I sold the house. It held too many ghosts. Every corner, every shadow whispered memories I wanted to erase. The laughter in the kitchen, the warmth of her body next to mine in bed, the quiet Sunday mornings with coffee and stolen kisses. I didn't want them anymore. I found a new place across town. Smaller but perfect. A fresh start. I changed my number. Blocked Anna and Daniel permanently. If they wanted to keep drowning in their own destruction, they could do it without me. I started going to the gym again, something I had neglected during the chaos. Pushing my body to exhaustion was the only way to silence my thoughts. Each lift, each run on the treadmill, each drop of sweat. It was a form of control. A way to reclaim myself. Friends reached out. Some cautiously, afraid I was still fragile. Others just curious about the details. Eager to hear the juicy story firsthand. I entertained none of it. The past was the past. I was done talking about it. One evening, a few months after everything, I ran into an old friend at a bar. We talked, we laughed, we caught up on life. And at some point in the conversation, she looked at me and said, "You seem different, lighter." I hadn't realized it until then, but she was right. I was different. The bitterness, the anger, it wasn't weighing me down anymore. I had done what I needed to do, and now I could finally let go. That night, as I walked home under the city lights, I smiled to myself. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't looking back. I was looking forward. 6 months had passed. 6 months since I walked out of that hotel room. 6 months since I watched my so-called best friend fall apart. Since I saw Anna's world crumble around her. Since I burned every bridge and left them in the ruins of the life they had chosen. And you know what? I hadn't thought about them in weeks. I woke up that morning feeling lighter than I had in years. The nightmares had stopped. The anxiety that used to sit like a weight in my chest was gone. I no longer checked my phone expecting to see their names. The past was exactly where it belonged, behind me. I stepped out onto the balcony of my new apartment, coffee in hand, watching the city stir to life. It was a different view from the one I used to have. No memories clung to these walls. No ghosts whispered in the silence. I had built something new, and for the first time in a long time I was happy. That day, I got a message from an old friend.
Lisa.
We had worked together years ago, before life got complicated. She was in town and wanted to catch up. I hesitated for only a moment before replying. "Me sounds good. Let's grab a drink." That evening, we met at a small, quiet bar tucked away from the busy streets. Lisa hadn't changed much. Same sharp wit, same easy laughter. She was someone who had always spoken her mind, never one for bullshit or pretenses. We talked for hours. About work, about life, about everything except the past that had once consumed me. At some point, she gave me a look. Amused, curious. "You know," she said, swirling her drink, "I half expected you to be some bitter, cynical wreck after everything that happened." I laughed. "Yeah? And what do you see instead?" She studied me for a moment, then smiled. Someone who finally let go. I thought about that, and realized she was right. That night, I walked home under the city lights, hands in my pockets, breathing in the crisp evening air. I didn't feel like a man who had been broken. I didn't feel like a man consumed by vengeance. I felt like a man who had survived. Anna and Daniel? They were nothing but a chapter in my story. A painful, brutal chapter, but just a chapter. And I had finally turned the page. A new beginning. A new life. And this time I was writing it on my terms. The end.